My wife returned from her corporate training, in Chicago glowing like a newlywed. 3 weeks later, she announced she was pregnant with our fourth child. I should have been thrilled, but something felt wrong. Then I found the hotel receipt in her suitcase. Not from her company hotel, but from a luxury boutique across town. When the DNA test results came back, they didn't just destroy my marriage. They revealed a betrayal so calculated, so deliberate, that even her own children turned against her. This is how I made her pay for every lie. My name is Clayton Mooney, but everyone calls me Clay. I'm 46 years old, and for the past 18 years, I thought I had it all figured out. I own Mooney Motors, the most successful used car dealership in our part of Ohio. Started with nothing but a dream and a $5,000 loan from my old man. Built it from the ground up, one honest deal at a time. My wife Vivian, she was my rock through all of it. We met when I was 25, just starting out in the car business. She was working as a marketing coordinator for a small firm downtown. Beautiful woman with auburn hair and green eyes that could light up a room. We got married 3 years later, and she helped me grow the business while raising our 3 kids. Asher's 17 now, senior in high school, quarterback on the football team. Kid's got a full ride to Ohio State waiting for him. Then there's Chloe, 13, smart as a whip and twice as stubborn as her mother. And Benjamin, our baby at 9, always got his nose in a book or building something with his hands. The dealership was doing better than ever. We just opened a second location across town, and I was thinking about expanding into the next county. 22 years of marriage, 3 great kids, a business that was thriving. I thought we were living the American dream. Viv had climbed the corporate ladder over the years, too. She was now a senior marketing director at Henderson & Associates, pulling in good money, working with big corporate clients. We were a team, you know. She'd handle the marketing for both dealerships, and I'd focus on sales and operations. Perfect partnership, both in business and in life. Our house was paid off, a 4-bedroom colonial on Maple Street with a 2-car garage and a backyard big enough for the kids to play in. We took family vacations every summer, usually to the Gulf Coast. Had money in the bank, retirement accounts growing, college funds for all 3 kids. But success can make you complacent. When you're working 60-hour weeks and coming home tired every night, you start taking things for granted. You assume your wife's happy because she's not complaining. You figure your marriage is solid because you're not fighting. You think loyalty is a given because you've been together so long. That was my first mistake, assuming everything was fine just because it looked fine on the surface. The second mistake was not recognizing that the woman I fell in love with 25 years ago had changed. Hell, we both changed. But I was too busy building our future to notice that somewhere along the way, we'd stopped building our marriage. Maybe if I'd taken her on more date nights instead of working late. Maybe if I'd paid more attention to her needs instead of focusing on the kids and the business. Maybe if I'd seen the signs of her growing restlessness, her need for something more than what we had. But you can't change the past. You can only deal with what's in front of you. And what was about to unfold would test every bit of strength I thought I had. The first time I should have known something was wrong was when Viv came back from that corporate training seminar in Chicago. She'd been gone for 5 days, and when she walked through her front door, she looked like a completely different woman. She returned glowing from that conference, and I mean literally glowing. Her skin had this radiant quality I hadn't seen in years. Her hair was styled differently, sleeker somehow. She moved with this confident energy that seemed foreign in our own living room. "Hey honey, how was the trip?" I asked, getting up from my recliner where I'd been helping Benjamin with his math homework. "Oh, it was incredible, Clay," Viv said, but she barely looked at me when she answered. Instead, she was checking her phone, smiling at something on the screen. Really opened my eyes to new possibilities. That phrase stuck with me. New possibilities. What the hell did that mean? She rolled her suitcase straight to the laundry room without unpacking it first. That was the first red flag. Viv was the type of woman who unpacked within 30 minutes of walking through the door. Always had been. She'd sort everything, start a load of laundry, and put the suitcase back in the closet before dinner. But that night, she just closed the laundry room door behind that suitcase and announced she was too tired to talk about the trip. Too tired. I said, "Viv, you used to give me play-by-plays of your grocery store runs that lasted 3 hours. Now you're back from Chicago and don't want to talk." She just shrugged and headed upstairs. "Maybe tomorrow, Clay." I need to process everything I learned. Process everything. More corporate speak that didn't sound like my wife. The kids noticed too. When Chloe asked about the conference at dinner the next night, Viv gave these vague, rehearsed-sounding answers about team-building exercises and leadership development. Nothing concrete, nothing personal, nothing that sounded like the woman who used to tell us every detail of her workday. But the biggest change was how she started treating me. Not cold exactly, but distant. Like she was looking at me through new eyes and wasn't particularly impressed with what she saw. When I tried to hug her that first night back, she went through the motions, but her body felt rigid, uncomfortable. Her phone became her constant companion. Always face down on the counter, always within arm's reach. She'd glance at it during conversations, smile at messages, then quickly swipe them away when anyone got close. "Who keeps texting you?" I asked one evening. "Just work stuff," she replied, but her cheeks flushed pink. You know how it is with corporate clients. They expect immediate responses. I knew how it was with her work, and this wasn't it. Viv had always been professional, but she'd never been glued to her phone like a teenager with her first crush. The woman who came back from Chicago wasn't the woman who'd left for Chicago. And deep down, I think I knew that whatever happened in that conference room had nothing to do with marketing strategies or leadership development. Something had shifted, and the foundation of our marriage was starting to feel less solid than I'd thought. 2 weeks after Chicago, the distance between Viv and me had grown into a chasm I couldn't ignore anymore. She was physically present, but emotionally checked out, like she was living in our house, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. The woman who used to greet me with a kiss when I came home from the dealership now barely looked up from her laptop when I walked through the door. She'd started working later hours, claiming Henderson and Associates had landed some big client that required her immediate attention. "Which client?" I asked one evening, genuinely curious about her work like I'd always been. "You wouldn't know them," she said dismissively. "It's complicated corporate stuff." Complicated corporate stuff. My wife, who used to explain every project in detail, was now treating me like I was too stupid to understand her job. The kids were starting to notice too. Benjamin asked me why Mom didn't help with homework anymore. Chloe mentioned that Viv seemed distracted during their shopping trip for school clothes. Even Asher, who was usually too busy with football and friends to pay attention to family dynamics, commented that Mom seemed different. Different how? I asked him. "I don't know, Pops," Asher said, using the nickname he called me since he was little. "She's like, happier but sadder at the same time." Does that make sense? It made perfect sense, and that's what scared me. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning. I was in the garage working on a 1967 Mustang I'd bought for restoration, my weekend hobby that helped me relax. Viv walked in, dressed in workout clothes I'd never seen before, carrying a gym bag. "Where are you headed?" I asked, looking up from the engine I was rebuilding. "New fitness class," she said. "Hot yoga." Hot yoga. My wife, who had complained about sweating for 20 years, was suddenly interested in hot yoga. "Since when do you do yoga?" "Since I decided to take better care of myself," she snapped, with an edge in her voice I wasn't used to hearing. "Is that a problem?" I set down my wrench and really looked at her. The workout clothes were designer, expensive. Her hair was perfectly styled for someone supposedly heading to a sweaty yoga class. And she was wearing makeup. Who goes to yoga wearing full makeup, Viv? Her cheeks flushed red. "I might grab coffee afterward. With some of the other women from class." "What other women?" "You don't know them." Another non-answer. My wife was becoming a master of saying nothing while talking plenty. After she left, I found myself doing something I'd never done in 22 years of marriage. I went through her things. Not proud of it, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Her laptop was password protected now. It never had been before. Her purse, which used to be an open book, was suddenly off limits. Even her dresser drawers seemed more organized, like she was hiding something. But it was the credit card statement that really got my attention. Charges I didn't recognize. Restaurants I'd never been to. A hotel charge from 2 weeks ago. Not in Chicago, but right here in town. Why would my wife need a hotel room in her own city? 3 weeks after the yoga revelation, Viv dropped the bombshell that should have been the happiest news of our marriage. "Clay, I need to tell you something," she said one evening after the kids had gone to bed. We were sitting in the living room, but she was on the opposite end of the couch, as far from me as possible. I muted the television and turned to face her. What's up? I'm pregnant. For a moment, I couldn't process what she'd said. We'd talked about having another baby years ago, but Viv had been adamant that 3 kids were enough. She'd even mentioned getting her tubes tied after Benjamin was born. Pregnant, I repeated, my brain struggling to catch up. Are you sure? She nodded, but she wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying tears of joy. She wasn't doing any of the things I'd expect from a woman who'd just discovered she was carrying our 4th child. Instead, she looked terrified. How far along? I asked. About 6 weeks. 6 weeks. I did the math in my head. That would put conception right around the time of her Chicago trip. That's incredible, honey, I said, moving closer to hug her, but she stiffened in my arms. I mean, it's unexpected, but it's wonderful news. Is it? She whispered, and there was something in her voice that made my blood run cold. Of course it is. We make beautiful babies together, Viv. Look at our 3 kids. She pulled away from me, tears starting to form in her eyes. But these weren't happy tears. These were the tears of someone carrying a terrible secret. I need to make a doctor's appointment, she said, standing abruptly, to confirm everything. I'll come with you. No, she said quickly. I mean, it's not necessary. It's just a routine appointment. Since when was confirming a pregnancy routine enough that the father didn't need to be there? When Viv was pregnant with each of her other children, I'd been at every appointment, holding her hand, asking the doctor a million questions. Viv, are you okay? You don't seem happy about this. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm just overwhelmed. It's been a stressful time at work, and now this. But stress didn't explain the look of guilt I saw flashing across her face. Stress didn't explain why she wouldn't let me hold her, or why she seemed more scared than excited. That night, lying in bed next to my wife, who was curled up as far away from me as possible, I stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of everything. The mysterious hotel charge, the secretive phone calls, the sudden interest in fitness and designer workout clothes, the way she'd been pulling away from me and the kids. And now a pregnancy she seemed anything but thrilled about. The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't want to see, but couldn't ignore anymore. Something was very wrong in my marriage, and this baby might be the key to understanding exactly what that something was. The morning after Viv's pregnancy announcement, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong. While she was at her doctor's appointment, alone, despite my offers to come, I found myself doing something I never thought I'd do in my marriage. I went through her things like a detective. Started with the credit card statements I'd glimpsed earlier, pulled them all up online, and printed every charge from the past 3 months. What I found made my stomach drop. Multiple charges at restaurants I'd never been to, always for 2 people. A charge at Victoria's Secret for more money than Viv had spent on lingerie in our entire marriage. And that hotel charge, not just one night, but 3 different occasions, all while she was supposedly at work. But the smoking gun was her suitcase. Viv had finally unpacked it yesterday, but she'd missed something. Tucked in the side pocket was a receipt from a high-end restaurant in Chicago. Date stamped during her conference. Dinner for 2, expensive wine, dessert. The kind of romantic dinner you don't have with colleagues. My hand shook as I held that piece of paper. 22 years of marriage, and my wife was having dinner dates with another man. I sat in our bedroom, surrounded by the life we'd built together, trying to process what this meant. The family photos on the dresser seemed to mock me. Our wedding picture on the nightstand felt like evidence of a crime. Then I remembered something Raleigh had told me months ago. His cousin worked in corporate security and had mentioned that most affairs leave digital footprints. Email accounts, social media, messaging apps. Viv's laptop was downstairs, but I knew her password. It had always been Benjamin's birthday. When I opened it, my heart sank. The password had been changed, but her old tablet was still in the kitchen drawer, the one she'd stopped using when she got a new phone. I powered it up, hoping it might still be logged into her accounts. Bingo. Her Gmail was still active, and there was a folder I'd never seen before labeled Project Planning. Innocent enough, except when I opened it, I found dozens of emails between Viv and someone named Trevor Walsh. The early messages were professional, discussing marketing strategies and client presentations. But as I scrolled through the dates, they became more personal. Compliments about her ideas. Comments about how much he enjoyed working with her. Invitations to grab coffee after meetings. Then came the message that made my blood run cold. Can't wait to see you in Chicago. I've made reservations at that place you mentioned. The timestamp was 2 days before her conference. This wasn't a chance encounter or a moment of weakness. This was planned, premeditated. My wife had deliberately arranged to meet another man in Chicago, and now she was carrying what might be his child. I printed every email, my hands trembling with rage and heartbreak. 22 years of loyalty, of building a business together, of raising 3 children, and she'd thrown it all away for some smooth-talking corporate climber named Trevor Walsh. The worst part? She was still lying, still pretending this baby might be mine, still looking me in the eye every morning and acting like nothing had changed. But everything had changed, and now I had proof. I spent the rest of that day in a haze, going through the motions of the dealership while my mind raced with plans. By the time I got home, I'd made a decision. No more waiting, no more hoping I was wrong. It was time for the truth. Viv was in the kitchen making dinner when I walked in, humming softly like she didn't have a care in the world. The sight of her acting so normal while carrying such massive lies made my jaw clench. "How was the doctor's appointment?" I asked, setting my keys on the counter. "Fine," she said without turning around. "Everything looks good. Baby's healthy. Baby's healthy." She said it so casually, like there wasn't a question in the world about whose baby it was. "That's great news," I said, pulling the printed emails from my jacket pocket. "I have something we need to discuss." She finally turned around, and when she saw the papers in my hand, her face went pale. "What are those?" "I think you know exactly what these are, Viv." I spread the emails across the kitchen island like playing cards. Her eyes darted over them, and I watched her face go through a series of emotions: surprise, panic, guilt, and finally, defiance. "You went through my personal emails?" "Your personal emails?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "These aren't personal emails, Viv. These are love letters. To Trevor Walsh." She straightened her shoulders, trying to regain some composure. "Trevor is a colleague. We work together on projects." "Really?" "Because this one here," I said, pointing to a particularly damning message, "talks about how much he misses your touch. That seems pretty unprofessional for a work colleague." Her face flushed red. "Clay, you're taking things out of context." "Out of context." My voice was rising now, and I didn't care if the kids heard. "Viv, you plan to meet him in Chicago. You had romantic dinners together. You're having an affair, and now you're pregnant with what might be his child. That's not." She started, then stopped. For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. "It's not what, Viv?" "Not true. Not what it looks like. Not the end of our marriage." Tears started flowing down her cheeks, but I felt no sympathy. These weren't tears of remorse. These were tears of someone who'd been caught. "I never meant for this to happen," she whispered. "But it did happen. You made choices, Viv. You chose to betray 22 years of marriage. You chose to risk our family. You chose to lie to my face while carrying another man's baby." "We don't know whose baby it is," she said quickly. I stared at her for a long moment. "Yes, we do. You know, don't you? You've known all along." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, she nodded. "Get out," I said quietly. "Clay, please. Let me explain. Get out of my house. Tonight. Take whatever you need, but I want you gone." She stood there crying, but I was done. Done with the lies, done with the manipulation, done with being made a fool of in my own home. Where am I supposed to go? "Call Trevor. I'm sure he'll take care of you and his baby." The cruelty in my own voice surprised me, but I was past caring. She destroyed everything we built together. Now she could live with the consequences. The 3 days after I kicked Viv out were the hardest of my life. Not because I missed her, I was too angry for that, but because I had to explain to our kids why their mother wasn't coming home. Asher took it the worst. Found him punching the heavy bag in our garage at midnight, tears streaming down his face. "I heard you and Mom fighting," he said without stopping his punches. "She really cheated on you." "Yes, son, she did." He hit the bag harder. "With some guy from her work?" "Yes. And the baby isn't yours." I put my hand on his shoulder, stopping his assault on the punching bag. "Probably not." Asher turned to face me, and I saw something in his 17-year-old eyes that no kid should have to carry. The realization that one of his parents had destroyed their family for a selfish desire. "What happens now, Pops?" "Now we figure out how to move forward. The 3 of you are my priority. Everything else is just details." Chloe was different. She got quiet, withdrawn, stopped eating much at dinner, spent most of her time in her room drawing. When I finally asked her what she was thinking about, she said something that broke my heart. If mom could lie to you for months, how do I know when adults are telling me the truth? 13 years old, and she was already learning that people you trust can betray you without warning. Benjamin was too young to understand the full situation, but he kept asking when mommy was coming home. Each time I had to explain that mommy was staying somewhere else for a while, I watched a little bit of his innocence disappear. Meanwhile, Viv had moved in with her sister Karen across town. She'd been calling constantly, begging to talk, claiming she could explain everything. I finally answered one of her calls just to make it stop. "Clay, please," Viv said, her voice thick with tears I didn't believe anymore. "Can we meet? Can we try to work this out?" "There's nothing to work out, Viv. You had an affair. You're pregnant with another man's child. Our marriage is over. The kids need their mother. The kids needed their mother, not to destroy their family. You made your choice." I hung up and called the lawyer Raleigh had recommended. Time to make this official. The hardest part wasn't the anger or the betrayal. It was explaining to my parents, my brother, our friends. 22 years of marriage, and I had to tell everyone that my wife had been living a double life. Most people were supportive, but I could see the questions in their eyes. Had I been a bad husband? Had I driven her to this? Had I missed obvious signs? The truth was, I had missed signs. But that didn't make this my fault. Viv had made deliberate choices to betray our family. She could have talked to me about problems in our marriage. Instead, she chose deception. Now she was about to face the consequences of those choices, and so were our kids. 2 weeks after the confrontation, I was sitting in my lawyer's office with a stack of evidence that painted a clear picture of Viv's affair and deception. "This is pretty damning stuff, Clay," said Jim Patterson, a divorce attorney with 30 years of experience. "The emails, the credit card statements, the hotel receipts. She's going to have a hard time denying any of this. What about the pregnancy? We'll demand a paternity test as soon as it's safe to do one. If the child isn't yours, it strengthens your position significantly." Jim leaned back in his chair and studied me. "I have to ask, any chance of reconciliation? Courts prefer to keep families together when possible." "None," I said firmly. "She had an affair, lied about the pregnancy, and showed no remorse until she got caught. My kids deserve better than a mother who would deceive their father for months." "Understood. Now let's talk about assets." That's when things got complicated. The dealership was worth close to $2 million, but Viv had been integral to its marketing and growth. The house was worth $800,000. We had retirement accounts, college funds for the kids, and various investments. "She's going to claim she's entitled to half of everything," Jim warned. "Ohio is an equitable distribution state, which means the court tries to be fair, not necessarily equal." "What about her affair? Doesn't that count for something?" "It can, especially if she spent marital assets on the relationship. Those hotel charges and restaurant bills you found, if she was using joint credit cards to fund her affair, that works in our favor." I thought about Trevor Walsh, the man who'd helped destroy my marriage. "What do we know about him?" "I've had my investigator look into it. He's married, 2 kids, lives in Chicago, worked for the same company as your wife. Apparently, this isn't his first office romance." Meaning your wife wasn't his first affair. There were others before her. The information hit me like a punch to the gut. Viv had thrown away 22 years of marriage for a serial cheater who saw office affairs as entertainment. Does she know about the other women? Hard to say, but I doubt Mr. Walsh painted himself as a chronic adulterer when he was wooing your wife. I left the lawyer's office with a clear plan. File for divorce, demand paternity testing, fight for primary custody of the kids, and make sure Viv faced the full consequences of her betrayal. But first, I had to prepare for what was coming next. Because Jim had warned me that Viv's family was likely to rally around her, and that meant I needed to be ready for a war. The woman I'd loved for over 20 years was about to become my enemy, and I was going to make damn sure I won. 6 months after I kicked Viv out, the paternity test results arrived in a sealed envelope that would determine the future of what remained of our family. I sat in my lawyer's office with Jim Patterson, holding that envelope like it contained a bomb. In many ways it did. "Whatever it says, we're prepared," Jim assured me. "Your case is strong either way." I tore it open and read the results twice before the words sank in. 0% probability that I was the father. "Well?" Jim asked. "It's not mine." Jim nodded grimly. "I'm sorry, Clay. I know part of you is hoping otherwise." But honestly, I wasn't hoping otherwise. A baby would have tied me to Viv forever, and I was done with that woman. This result meant I could cut her out of my life completely once the divorce was final. What does this mean for the custody arrangement? Your kids are old enough that the court will consider their preferences. And based on what you've told me about their feelings toward their mother, I think we're in good shape. The divorce proceedings have been brutal. Viv's family had rallied around her, painting me as a cold, unforgiving husband who wouldn't fight for his marriage. Her mother actually called me, crying, begging me to take Viv back. She made a mistake, Clay, she'd said. Don't you believe in forgiveness? I believe in consequences, I'd replied. Your daughter didn't make a mistake. She made months of deliberate choices to betray our family. The kids have been amazing throughout the whole process. Asher had started working at the dealership after school, learning the business. Someone needs to help you keep this place running. Pops, he'd said. Chloe had stepped up to help with Benjamin, acting more mature than her 13 years. And Benjamin, sweet Benjamin, had adapted better than I'd expected, though he still asked about his mom sometimes. Viv had given birth to a baby girl 3 weeks ago, Trevor Walsh's daughter, though his name wasn't on the birth certificate. Apparently, he'd refused to acknowledge the child, and his wife had filed for divorce when she found out about the affair. So Viv was now a single mother with a newborn, living in a one-bedroom apartment, working part-time because she couldn't afford full-time childcare. The fantasy life she'd imagined with Trevor had crashed into reality. The court hearing is next week, Jim reminded me. Are you ready? I thought about my 3 kids, who'd been through hell because of their mother's selfishness. I thought about the business I'd built, the house I'd worked years to pay off, the life I constructed through honest work and dedication. I'm ready. I wasn't just ready to end this marriage. I was ready to show the world what happened when you betrayed a man who'd given you everything. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, I was sitting in my office at the dealership when Asher walked in with the monthly sales reports. We're up 18% from last year. Pops, he said, setting the paperwork on my desk. The new location is exceeding projections. My oldest son was 19 now, a sophomore at Ohio State studying business, but he still worked for me during breaks and summers. The boy had grown into a man during this whole ordeal, and I couldn't be prouder. Your mom called again, he said casually, like he was mentioning the weather. What did she want? To see Benjamin. I told her she needed to go through you. Viv had been trying to rebuild relationships with our kids for over a year now. Chloe, who was 15 and more forgiving than her brothers, had started seeing her mother occasionally. Benjamin, now 11, was curious about his half-sister but still preferred staying with us. Asher wanted nothing to do with her. She's not the same person anymore, he'd told me once. Even when she talks to us, it's like she's trying to be someone she's not. Like she knows she messed up but doesn't know how to fix it. The truth was, some things couldn't be fixed. Trust, once broken the way Viv had broken it, couldn't be glued back together. But we were thriving without her. The business was better than ever. I'd bought 2 more lots and was considering franchising the operation. The kids were happy, healthy, and had learned some hard but valuable lessons about loyalty and consequences. I'd even started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I'd met a woman named Sarah at a Chamber of Commerce event. She was a widow with 2 teenage kids of her own, and she understood the complexities of blended families and broken trust. You know what the best part about all this is? I told Asher as we locked up the dealership that evening. What's that? I found out who I really am. Not Clay the husband, or Clay the partner. Just Clay. And I like that guy. Asher grinned. That guy's pretty tough. Takes after his old man. As we walked to our cars, I thought about the man I'd been 2 years ago. Trusting, maybe naive, certainly not prepared for the betrayal that nearly destroyed my family. That man was gone. In his place was someone stronger, wiser, and absolutely certain of his own worth. Viv had thought she could trade up, find something better than what we had. Instead, she'd lost everything. Her family, her financial security, her reputation, and the respect of her own children. Meanwhile, I'd learned that I didn't need anyone else to be complete. I had my kids, my business, and my self-respect, and that was more than enough to build a good life on.